coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California. I'm Katie.
I'm Anne.
And I'm Karin.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Hello, everybody. Welcome. How's it going?
Howdy. Going pretty
Hey.
Good. What's everybody working on? I know we usually, forget, or I usually forget to ask what you're knitting, but I figured I'd start right off the bat. What are you knitting? Or crocheting?
I love it. It's my favorite part, other than talking about a book.
Well, good, because we're going to do both of those things.
Yay!
Yay!
Where's my picture? I have a picture.
I'm going to be working on two things tonight. One is the Pearl Soho. What is it called? It's a like a neckerchief cowl.
Oh,
Okay.
I think it's just called bandana cowl. Maybe.
Yeah,
sure.
I started it last night at like 8:00 last night, and it is done.
Wow. What?
Weaving in my ends. So
that's awesome.
The staff exchange, I recognized that there was a ball of a limited edition Manos del Uruguay classic.
Yeah.
From like their Valentine color from, when do you think that was? 2017 maybe?
I don't even know.
Wow.
Where they had the monthly special color.
Yeah, that was.
And each store got like 10 balls of
vintage.
It.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking, I'm like, this is probably like a decade old, and I'm like, look at this new yarn.
It's brand new.
Yeah.
It's new to you.
And then I had like a little bit, right, a little bit of this really wonderful yarn that I made a really cool stranded sweater out of. It's I think it's Portuguese wool, but I can't think of the brand right now. It always has these cute little illustrations. It's like Rosa. So I can't think of my yarn name. I can't think of my pattern name.
Welcome to my world.
Okay. Right. It's the Pearl Soho bandana cowl.
They always have very exciting names for their patterns, so that's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. And the Portuguese wool that I ordered from Retrosaria.
Sure.
It was their sport rate Vovo Retrosario in like a scarlet and the natural color. So I wasn't sure if the ball of Manos would go the whole way, which it would have. It's like designed, it's designed for Pearl Soho yarn, but the Pearl Soho yarn is 139 yards and the Manos is 138.
Whoa. You're cutting it close, Anne.
So close. Wow.
I thought the little stripes were cute in the garter stitch.
That's very cute. Is it for you?
So that's about done. I'm just weaving in my ends. Yes.
Nice.
I will be wearing it tomorrow. And then I'm going to pick up my my multicolored potato, also known as a musselburg.
Sweet.
That is in Hobie.
Having multiple colors just keeps you motivated.
Oh yeah.
I've had a tough time staying motivated on the one that's one color. I mean, even for Malabrigo, it's kind of boring.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I keep telling people, they're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, Karin calls it potato."
Yeah,
and then
it's potato hat. It's potato hat.
I was working on mine the other day, and my friend saw me knitting, and they were like, "What in the world are you making?" And I was like, "It's a hat. I'll explain it to you later." It's like, why is your hat 13 inches long already?
Right?
That is like the world's longest head, right?
Yeah. It's slouchy, guys. Right?
Very slouchy.
Slouchy enough to come down to here, down to my chest.
Do you tie it in a knot? Do you throw it over? Right.
What are you working on, Karin?
Do your ears hang low?
Yeah.
What's that?
What are you working on?
I am doing a test crochet cowl. Oh, shoot. Sorry. My cat got my yarn.
Uh-oh.
I thought I kept it from him. Okay. So it's a crochet mosaic. And I kind of drew out this long boat shape. That's the shape, the flat lay of it. But then you twist it and it lays like this.
I've seen this before.
2 layers.
It's very cute.
Yeah, it's very cool. So it's
I think she has
infinity shape.
done her progress a little bit, but now the pattern's ready to be tested.
Cute.
And I swatched in the round.
Wow.
So I got a sense of the pattern. which is really
Very
cool.
pretty.
And I made a little cufflet, which I have not done any. The ends are still not there. This is not my regular yarn. I went stashing, and I don't have enough stash to make the whole thing. But while I'm waiting for my order to come in, I can practice the stitch and practice and give her feedback. I just got the pattern yesterday, and I'm already giving good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You can see I'm using, it's half of it has that mosaic and the other half is just stripes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using Knit Picks Wonder Fluff,
Oh,
though
yummy.
I'm going to do it in 2 ombre colors. One that's an ombre of green tea, and the other one is an ombre of forest green to brown. So
Nice.
that's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
So it'll have a high contrast. I had some other stash yarn, but it just, that when you hold them together, I thought, hey, I've got this worsted yarn because I was going to make potato hats for the whole family. And I'm like, maybe just make it for me. And if I have this yarn I can use, it's enough.
Nice.
But there's not enough of 2 colors to make a contrast. When I do put them black and white against each other, they're pretty much in the same family. Which, when they're in your hand, they don't. One is pretty solid, and the other is a multicolor. But once what is this magic, this reverse magic that happens when you fall in love with a skein, but when you cake it up, somehow it's not the same?
Oh, you like things better in the skein than in the
Sometimes when it's in the skein, it's still filled with possibilities. You don't see how the average color plays out. You just see the pops. But sometimes when it's caked,
I think you can trust it better when it's in a hank.
I think so too. You get more of an idea of how it lays, I think.
Yeah. So you could,
you do for the texture, but the color seems to change. Maybe my eye doesn't catch all the color values when it's caked, when it's skeined, as when it's caked. So anyway, so that is where I decided to pivot and save that yarn for something else.
Nice.
And so I do think I need to go to the doctor, though I don't think they'll be able to help me. I have a really, really bad startitis.
Oh.
I have really bad startitis. And as when we talk later about books, I've discovered it's not just with yarn.
Right. It's kind of the time of the year.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. I had the beginning. You got color A and B, and she reversed them, but I'm not taking out my foundation row. So on the chart, what's light is not going to be dark, and what was dark is not going to be light. Just for my practice one.
I always appreciate when I'm knitting a pattern right now that gives you both options, like the dark with the white accent, and then she gives you the opposite, because sometimes it's the opposite, which I thought was smart. Yep. Well, I'm working,
but it's not written that. But that's not how it was written.
No.
But okay, go ahead.
I'm going to show you guys what I'm working on. You have to guess what it is.
Oh, goody! I love this.
Yep, it's a hat.
I finished my.
It's what?
Did we both get it right?
Yeah, you both got it right. It's a Musselburgh and it's a hat. I heard somebody on Instagram call it Musselburgh, like Edinburgh. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it, but I'm saying Musselburgh because I don't want to say Musselburgh. I finished.
I'm gonna look.
My other Musselburgh.
I'm gonna look at where it is.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, look at that!
So that's the one I just finished. It's fuzzy. It's a strand of. I know we're not talking about what we finished, but I wanted to show you anyway. Because I just finished it today.
Okay.
I like it.
It's a strand of mohair and a single ply fingering weight, and I knit it according to pattern. But I think I'm going to make my second one longer because mine doesn't have much of a brim to fold up, which I wanted. So I think I need to make it a little longer next time. But it's done. And then the yarn that I'm using, I believe, was a gift from Karin.
Oh, I want to see.
Hold on, I'm tangled in it. I'm sitting on it, actually.
What did I help make?
I think was the Gauge Dyeworks
rainbow.
Yeah,
the Gauge Dyeworks for just the such occasion.
I think you gave this to me.
It's meant to be a Musselburgh. I did.
Yeah. So I ripped out the project I had started with this, which was not very far, and I cast on for this instead today because I found that I really enjoyed having a Musselburgh on my needles as like night knitting or travel knitting or whatever. So I cast on another one, and I was
to agree with that.
I was surprised.
I also agree. That's become my social knitting project.
I was surprised how not fast, but pretty fast I finished this one. It was on size 5 needles, and it did not take as long as I thought it was going to. The one I'm doing, the one I just cast on for is on size 3 needles, so it will take a little longer. But you know, it is what it is.
I would like to report that Musselburgh is probably right.
Oh. Well,
because it is spelled
like
the same
Edinburgh,
as Edinburgh.
like Edinburgh.
Well, I'm calling it Musselburgh.
Okay.
Yep. I kept thinking it was a German place.
I don't know.
But I guess it's a Scottish place.
Well, she's American of Scotch descent, I think.
Well, I mean, if you're in America, you're probably going to say Edinburgh, even though that's not technically correct. So I'm going to say Musselburgh because I'm an American.
Yeah. Same. I'm not changing.
And we have the right to mispronounce anything we like.
Yeah.
Well, who wants to talk about a book?
Me.
All right.
I do.
We have an epic of a book to talk about today. So we
I finished a half hour before we
nice. We read The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. Is that her first name? Isabel, right? Yes.
Isabel Allende. Isabel Allende.
I have the good thing about picking a book that was written in like the 80s is that there are numerous resources for book club questions and synopses and things like that. So I had a bit of a hard time narrowing down resources, but I will reference where the ones that I chose have come from. And if you will bear with me, I found a short-ish Spark Notes synopsis. It's a little long compared to like the book jacket, but I think it'll give us some good context because it's a long book. So I will read this if you will bear with me for a minute. Yeah, that's true. Okay. On the day that the priest accused her of being possessed by the devil and her uncle Marcos's body was delivered to her house accompanied by a puppy, I'm not remembering how you pronounce that dog's name. Barabas, that's his name. Clara del Valle began keeping a journal. 50 years later, her husband Esteban and her daughter Alba refer to these journals as they piece together the story of their family. Clara is a young girl when Barabas, excuse me, my pronunciation for Chilean, accent is not great. Clara is a young girl when he arrives at the de Valle household. Her favorite sister, Rosa, the beautiful, is engaged to Esteban Trueba. Clara is clairvoyant and is able to predict almost every event in her life. She's not able to change the future, only to see it. While Esteban is off in the mines, working to make his fortune, Rosa is accidentally poisoned by in the place of her father, Severo de Valle. Rosa dies. Clara is so shocked by the events that she stops talking. 9 years later, Esteban has made a fortune with his family property, Tres Marias, thanks to his hard work and to his exploitation of the local peasants. On top of exploiting their labor, Esteban exploits all of the young girls of the peasant families, noticeably Pancha, for his sexual satisfaction. In addition to the peasant girls, Esteban also has sexual relations with prostitutes, including Transito Soto. Transito and Esteban become friends, and he lends her money to move to the city. Esteban's mother is about to die, and he returns to the city where he pays a visit to the Del Valle home. Esteban and Clara become engaged and marry. They move into the big house on the corner that Esteban built for them. Esteban's sister, Ferula, moves in with them. About a year after they're married, Clara and Esteban's first child, Blanca, is born. When the family travels to Tres Marias for the summer, a few years later, Blanca meets Pedro Tercero, and they fall in love. Pedro Tercero is the son of Pedro Segundo, the peasant foreman of Tres Marias. Toward the end of the summer, Clara becomes pregnant again with twins, who she announces will be named Jaime and Nicolas. Days before the twins are due, Clara's parents are killed in a car accident. Rescuers are unable to find her mother's head. No one wants to tell Clara that Nivea is buried headless because they do not want to upset her just before the birth. Clara, however, realizes her mother's head was not found and makes Ferula go out with her to find it. As soon as they recover her mother's head, Clara goes into labor. Over the years, Ferula and Clara have developed a deep friendship. Ferula's feelings for Clara border on passionate love, and she and Esteban developed a rivalry over Clara's affections. One morning, Esteban comes home unexpectedly and finds Ferula in Clara's bed. Esteban kicks Ferula out of the house. As she leaves, she curses him with eternal loneliness. Blanco and Pedro Tercero's love grows as they mature, and they soon realize that Esteban would disapprove if he knew. In addition to their being of different classes, Pedro Tercero is a revolutionary, while Esteban is a conservative. Blanco and Pedro Tercero continue their romance in secret. Several years later, they are exposed to Esteban by Jean de Saint-Denis, who is trying to ingratiate himself with Esteban so he can become either his business partner or his son-in-law. Esteban makes Blanca leave Tres Marias and tries to kill Pedro Tercero. In his anger, Esteban hits Clara. She never talks to him again. For several years, although they live in the same house, they almost never see each other. Jaime and Nicolas finish boarding school and return home. Jaime studies medicine and Nicolas dabbles in spirituality and inventing. Esteban becomes very involved in the Conservative Party, runs for Senate and is elected. Esteban and Clara eventually return to a civil, if silent, relationship. A few years later, Blanca gets pregnant. Esteban tells her that he has killed Pedro Tercero and forces her to marry Jean de Saint-Denis. After 6 months, they are married. Blanca discovers Jean de Saint-Denis' unusual sexual practices and leaves him. She gives birth to her daughter Alba as soon as she arrives home at the big house on the corner. Miguel, the younger brother of a friend and lover of Nicolas and Jaime, watches Alba's birth from the closet. According to Clara, Alba is born lucky. She is raised by her entire family, inspiring great love in all. She's the only member of the family to develop a close and loving friendship with Esteban. Although she thinks that Jean de Saint-Denis is her father and that he is dead, Alba meets Pedro Tercero and establishes a friendship with him. To great sadness of everyone but herself, Clara dies. When she is 18, Alba enters the university where she meets Miguel, and they fall in love. Miguel is a revolutionary. They participate in some of the growing number of anti-conservative protests that are springing up around the country. To everyone's surprise, the socialists win the elections. Pedro Tercero joins the government. The peasants take over Tres Marias. Esteban tries to stop them and is taken hostage. At Blanca's request, Pedro Tercero intervenes and saves Esteban. Esteban and the conservatives do all that they can to discredit the socialists, including preparing for a military coup. A few months later, there is a military coup. Jaime, who is friends with the socialist president, is killed. Miguel joins the guerrillas, and Pedro Tercero goes into hiding in the big house on the corner. Esteban is at first pleased with the coup, but soon realizes that the result is not in the conservatives' return to power, but in the establishment of a military dictatorship. He is powerless to do much other than to help Blanco and Pedro Tercero escape to Canada. The colonel at the head of the dictatorship abducts Alba. He turns out to be Esteban Garcia, Pancha and Esteban Trueba's grandson. Before she died, Pancha told Esteban the story of his ancestry. Esteban slowly made his way up the ranks of the military, in the process acquainting himself with Trueba and his family, especially Alba. Under the guise of finding out where Miguel is, Esteban Garcia enacts revenge on Alba for his grandmother's mistreatment. Desperate to find Alba, Esteban returns to Transito Soto, who runs the Christopher Columbus, a brothel turned hotel. Thanks to the connections she has established through her sex work, Transito is able to repay the favor to Esteban that he did for her years before, and she assures that Alba is returned home. Alba and Esteban have just begun to write the story of their family when Esteban dies. Alba carries forth the project, pregnant with a child whose father is either Miguel or one of the men who raped her while she was in detention. So that is our synopsis of this book, which was long and spans 3 generations of this family, almost 4 generations of this family, and hits at almost a 5th generation of this family. But before we dive into the questions, how did you guys feel about the book? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts? Anne, you want to go first?
I really, really liked it, even though parts of it were foreboding and upsetting. It was beautiful, and I can see how it's stayed an important book for the last 42
Mhm.
years. It's beautiful, and I didn't know, like, I really didn't know much about Chilean history of the 20th century, which this spans such a big chunk of. And so it was really enlightening and most certainly heartening to read in these times.
Yes.
So I liked
Okay.
it. I missed, like, I finished it last night, and today I really missed not being in that world.
Yeah. Karin, what'd you think?
Parts of it I wish were shorter, but then as you're talking about synopsis, I'm like, oh yeah, but I really like that part. Oh, and I really like that part too. And I really like that part. And I only like this other part because I knew all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Like I
when
forgot
you
about her.
realize who Miguel is.
I mean, you go through the whole.
that.
I forgot. Like we go through the whole life of Clara, and even into her afterlife, right? Because she doesn't ever really go away. And it is really interesting to see family traits. So overall, I really enjoy it. I did enjoy it. Parts of me was like, okay, is this gonna be a book I don't not finish a book very often. So I thought, is this gonna be one I'm gonna be able to finish? And I did. I did. That 1.5 speed was really helpful.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. It was like, while I was reading it, I also, as you, Anne, didn't really know anything about Chilean history, which I didn't know until after I finished reading it, because I didn't really want to look it up until after I'd finished it, where exactly it takes place, because she never specifically says. So I was interested to learn a lot of this was based on her life almost. And also I'm in the same boat of, like, as I was reading it, I thought it was a little draggy, like a little slow, but I felt at the end that it was all justified and necessary. So, and each individual story, like, it doesn't have a narrative like a traditional book kind of does. It does and it doesn't. It's not like you have a beginning and a build up and a climax and then the ending. Like, you do a little bit, but it's sort of told in a lot of like vignettes of these different generations.
Yeah.
And without all of that history, I don't think it would have been as compelling at the end. So, I'm kind of in that same boat. I found an article from the Washington Post from October 3rd, 1999. And that is where I'm getting some of my book club questions today, because they were pretty well written and they also give us a lot of context. So this was written by Marie Arana. Thank you, Marie. I don't know if you know where you are now, but back in 1999, you wrote a very helpful article. So she has 4 or 5 questions here, each one sort of focused on a different portion of the book. So the first question is on women. So it says, Esteban Torreba's life may appear to be Allende's timeline, but her book is really about women coping in a man's world. Women are often transparent in Latin contexts, their roles greatly overshadowed by the men. Note Allende's names for her heroines, Nevea, Clara, Blanca, Alba, all suggest pallor and light, but the women in House of the Spirits have special powers, play subversive roles, and in the end become the fulcrum point of the story. Note how each needs to find a way to escape the tyrannies of a macho society. For Nevea, it's her otherworldliness. For Clara, it's a psychic life and social work. For Blanca, it's her forbidden love for a powerless... For Alba, it's revolution. These women seem radically different on the surface, but are they, in fact, variations on a single type? I guess the question, like, how different are all of these women in relation? Like, the matriarch of the family, you have Nevea, and then she gives birth to Rosa and Clara. Clara's the main focus of our story, and her daughter, Blanca, and then her granddaughter, Alba.
I don't remember what Nevea's like special talent is.
I think she was I think
She was fertile.
Yes, she had a lot of children. Her and her husband were like existentialists or something. So I think they were sort of counterculture to the society that they were living in a little bit. I think was their kind of deal because
she was a suffragette.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Okay. And like okay, I remember after Rosa died, she got like really political and really like into fighting for women's rights. Got it. Okay. I remember now.
So how different are all of these women? Like, do you think that they all sort of represent the same idea?
Probably. Just in the same way that like every generation of like, if you're like-minded in your family, which they keep telling us that they are, but through mental illness. Yeah. Which is maybe a derisive way to speak of their talents.
Yes.
Like mother, like daughter, I guess, each time.
Yeah. As a suffragette, Nevaeh was, I think of like Mrs. Banks from Mary Poppins. When I think of a suffragette, she's who I picture.
Yeah, all right.
And in the same way that they sort of portray her as like a little bit crazy, everyone talks about Nevaeh sort of the same way, in that she's doing, in her mind, she's doing a good thing for a good cause, but it's a little tone deaf when she's, going to the workers who are at her, what do you call it?
Like
her land,
property.
And she's like,
yeah,
hey, women's rights, and you girls should vote. And they're like, we have bigger fish to fry right now, lady.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. And then her daughter Clara is really the sort of like magical one in the family, in the like truest sense of the word, right? She literally has clairvoyant powers. She is named very aptly, but she uses those for good too, because she also becomes a long-suffering what's the word? Someone who does a lot of charity. A charitable person. Let's say that. A philanthropist, that's the word. And her daughter falls in love with a revolutionary, and then her daughter's daughter falls in love with a revolutionary. I think all of these women see a chance for a better future for women, and is sort of their focus. I don't know. It's a lot to unpack in one book.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
The patriarch Esteban Trueba builds the world as his family knows it. He raises a plantation out of the dirt, gives himself a place among the nation's mighty, but he also rapes, plunders, lies, and bullies. His bastard son begins as a pitiable creature, but acquires despotic power through a police uniform. An eccentric uncle is vain, undependable, and bizarre. Do these characters have any redeeming qualities? And is the picture that Allende paints of men altogether negative in the book?
No, it's not altogether negative. Because there's a lot of like positive painting of Pedro III, Pedro Segunda as well, of Miguel, of
Jaime.
Yeah. There's plenty of good men in this story, despite the bad men. But I'm so glad we're talking about Esteban right away, because I have this saying that I've been saying for a year or two. The villain rarely knows that they are the villain. Like, Esteban is sometimes the hero, but more usually the villain of the story. And when he has the moment to speak for himself, he really sees himself as a benevolent person.
Yes.
Whereas he is this terrible thunderstorm raging across, literally raging across people's lives.
Well, I think of like mob bosses that were very, very devoted fathers.
Yeah.
They could still kill people, but they were always home on Sunday with their family dinner.
Well, I mean,
the juxtaposition.
in the scheme of things, in the scheme of things, he did take good care of his people and his land.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that was good.
Right.
He just did better than the base norm of his peers.
Yeah.
But he really sees himself as a good person.
Yeah, he's not a good guy. Like, he is the sort of
Mm-mm.
antagonist of the story. And for 90% of the novel, you hate his guts.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think a really good example of what you're saying, Anne, is like he thinks he's great. And he improves the lives of the people that he is the patron for, and he is like, I'm doing great by these people. Look, they have all these beautiful little brick houses that they can live in, and I give them little slips of paper every month that they can take to my store and buy things. And his wife is like, why don't you give them actual money? And he's like, why would I give them real money? They don't know what to do with it. And I think at some point she convinces him that no, you should actually pay your people. But in his mind, it was totally right and justified for them to be totally under his thumb in every way possible. But in his mind, they have no means to take care of themselves. So I guess if you see other people as not fully human, it's okay to be like, look at how good of, I take such good care of all of these people.
Yeah, he really treats them like pets.
Yeah.
Working pets.
Working pets. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting character, and I guess we can talk about a little bit about his sort of redemption, because throughout the novel it's told from one person's perspective, and then at some point we learn that person is Alba, but it's also told from his perspective, and there's a lot less of it, so I think it makes sense narratively when he's like, I'm dying and I'm helping my granddaughter write this book. But at the end of the novel, he does have a little bit of redemption. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the leopard, the face-eating leopard party found out that, or members of it found out that their faces were going to be eaten. And that maybe this wasn't a really good situation for everyone when it enters his own home and takes his own beloved granddaughter from him.
I didn't think they were going to take us.
What have I done?
I didn't know this was going to be my problem. And then he shows up and he's like, excuse me, I'm the senator. Don't you know who I am? And they're like, we could give a crap about you, dude. Like, you have no... it does not matter at all who you are.
They're like, we thought the military would like work for us.
Yeah, no.
It didn't occur to us that they had their own ideas.
We just need the military to take over so that we can go back into power, but that's not how it worked out. This book became more and more pertinent as it went on.
Yep.
I thought so too. I thought, wow, is she a prognosticator of the future?
It's almost as if history repeats itself.
Yeah, from one dictatorship to another.
Well, I saw a representative speaking on the floor of Congress today, speaking to the fact that there were absolutely no Republican congresspeople on the floor, which is not normal, or hate to use this word, but unprecedented, which then tied perfectly to they never reopened Congress in Chile. Like, Congress was just disbanded.
Yeah, it was unsettling because most of the sort of political aspect of it and the coup and the takeover and all that is like the very last couple chapters of the book. It happens relatively quickly, even though it's been building to it throughout the entire novel. But boy, as it played out, I really was thinking about current events and how it's like a mirror, you know?
I thought that was just me.
No.
I thought maybe I was just seeing things that really weren't there, but it's so relevant right now.
And, I had that same feeling of like, am I pulling from this what
am I projecting
to? Yeah, like, am I transferring my ill-ease feelings for this tragic story? Maybe yes.
Apparently not. If we all saw the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our next question is about history. Antonio Machado, the great Spanish poet, once said, "También la verdad se inventa," which means truth can also be invented. Allende, quote, invents truth here by making her novel a sweeping history of Chile. This is evident in Trueba's cruel relation to his peasants, a racial divide that has marked Latin America culture since the 15th century, the two-tiered hierarchy of a landowner's, quote, legitimate and bastard children, the ongoing struggle between military men and revolutionaries, a coup that feels a great deal like a real-life installation of General Pinochet after the 1973 assassination of liberal President Salvador Allende, who was the author's uncle. The constant references to the, quote, the great poet, who is none other than Chile's Nobel Prize winner Pablo Neruda, the character of Pedro Tercero, who is Blanca's lover and Alba's father, a total reinvention of Victor Jara, a real musician whose hands were maimed as punishment for his rebellious songs. The hunger, the misery, the politics, the tortures, all of these themes are excellent sources for discussion. Is this then a political novel?
Yes.
Yeah, it feels like there's some satire because there's a time where you could not. I think of the Sting song about "They Dance Alone," about what was happening in Chile. You could not speak up and protest, or you would be a disappeared person. And a lot of the women, these women would gather in the court, in the not the court, in the courtyards of their village, and the only protest they could do was a silent protest of dancing, but as if their partner was there, but their partner's missing. So I think there is definitely some. It's sort of satire of the times.
Yeah, I didn't
make sense.
Go ahead, Anne.
I think I wish that it was more satirical. Like, doesn't satire kind of like, I feel like this was probably a pretty, though fictional, like pretty real portrayal. But it was lightened with some magical realism,
right?
Like all of the like supernatural abilities of Clara's line. But I feel like it was a pretty, like, though quaint, like a pretty straightforward telling. Because I don't think there was like a lot, like, I wish that there had been exaggeration.
Yeah, it was pretty one for one as far as history goes. Like that question was saying, as far as like, this person represents this other person, and this person is a direct, sort of mirror of this other person. And I kind of wish I had known going into the novel that it were more representative of actual history, because in my mind it was all narrative, and I didn't know that the history of Chile as a country. But
I had all these like details, like Pinochet floating around in my head as a bad guy in history. I knew of Pablo Neruda as a
poet,
famous poet, a Spanish language poet, but I didn't know his ties to Chile and Chilean history and politics. So same, like I wish I had better feet under me, but this is one of the beautiful things that books do, right? Is expose you to new understandings and worlds you didn't know, real or imagined, or both.
No, you're right. Our next question is about magic. Critics often say that writers are treading on Garcia Marquez territory if they write about ghosts or levitations or strange possessions of the soul. But in truth, these are deeply Latin American preoccupations forged over centuries by the fusion of indigenous American, Spanish, and African faiths. This isn't the first book that we have read that deals with sort of magical realism set in Latin America, because I'm thinking, what was the one about the bees?
Love that book.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't remember the name of it
It
right
was
now.
my
I should have
choice.
looked it up.
I know.
And I feel like there was another one too that we read relatively recently that took place. I'm sorry, I should have done my research when I started looking into this, but it's not the first time that we have read about. Oh, what was the other one?
There's Mexican Gothic.
Mexican Gothic.
There's
The Murmur of Bees,
and then
and
Murmur of Bees.
And I know that the one that took place in like Egypt wasn't set in Latin America, but wasn't the main character.
She was from
the main character was from somewhere in South America.
Was she Argentina? Maybe?
Something like that. Yes, that was it. Argentina.
Mm-hmm. The second book's out if you guys care.
I didn't. I didn't finish the first one. So.
I'm on a waiting list for it, but I'm not going to report back of like, wow, it got a million times better after she blew her.
What was the name of the? I know it was my choice, and I already forgot what it is because the book's not here with me.
River Knows or something. What the River Knows.
What the River Knows. Sequel. Okay.
I really liked The Murmur of Bees, but Allende did such a better job of like letting the characters show their selves instead of being caricatures. Because definitely upon examination, even though The Murmur of the Bees was such a like heartening story, like the classism in it kind of spoils the warm fuzzies after you really, you know, just scratch the surface. You go a little deeper. Not even very deep. Yeah. Beautiful story, but very classist. And this was a little bit more like, here's the stage. Everybody be who you are and show your true colors.
And did a really great job, I felt, of putting you exactly in that time and place without ever telling you what that time and place was. There's absolutely no reference to the date or the, the period or the... She never says the name of the country, so you're a little bit up in the air as far as that goes, but you have no problem picturing exactly what it looks like, which I think is
that
got a...
You just, because she tells us that's what she did. She tells us that's what Clara did, and I didn't really connect it till you just said that, of like, when Clara knows she's going to die and she starts gathering the notebooks by events instead of dates because she never wrote the dates down.
She forgot to write the dates down.
Remembered all the events. Yeah, and she didn't have time to go back and figure it out. And that's how we were told the story. Oh, I didn't connect that.
I mean, it was beautifully written, and it makes me really want to read something else by her.
Yes.
Because I found this...
There's a reason she's one of the greats.
The term magical realism gets tacked onto novels as if use of the supernatural for Latin writers were a literary device. It's more of a way of life, a constant presence in the mindset. Latins give much weight to dreams, fears, obsessions. These are haunting as ghosts, as visible as magic. When Clara makes the piano play from across a room or sees the future, is it a natural integral part of the storyline? She says there's a couple references here that I don't know. The American works, books, The Natural, the movie Hello Again, short stories, even TV programs like I Dream of Jeannie employ magical elements. How do they differ from the magic in this example?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know The Natural either. I just know it. Like, isn't that a Paul Newman movie or something?
No.
Anyway. Well, so, like, I've heard of it, but I never seen it. But, like, I Dream of Jeannie, that's fantastical.
It's fun.
Which also isn't really fair because Jinn are a part of another, way of life. But but the way it was presented in I Dream of Jeannie, that's extraordinary. It's not in the normal person's grasp, but like the way that this magical realism is portrayed, it's like a amplification of what's possible in a natural talent. And the same with The Murmur of the Bees. Like that boy just had a extra sensory ability to connect with a different part of nature than most people.
Yeah, and
like it's just like a better understanding of the natural world or tuned in a different way.
And it seemed natural because it wasn't like anybody was like, oh my god, your mom can predict the future. And there were so many other mystics that she surrounded herself with that it seemed like it was pretty ingrained in their culture. And everybody was like,
yeah,
that sounds right. That's how that works.
Yep.
It's like a natural part of the culture.
Yeah.
It's something that's accepted.
Yeah. Some people might
like being able to just play the piano.
And some people might look down on it or like discredit it, because then there's the whole like what's his name? The guy that could escape from anything, Houdini, who became a real voice for like disproving magic, right? There doesn't really seem to be a whole. I think at some point somebody mentions that there are skeptics, but it's not. It's like a teeny little part of the story. And there are so many examples of other forms of sort of everyday magic in this book.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know we love a good book about magical women. Yeah. We have read many of them.
Women. But this one, actually, most of the women, it's usually this.
Yeah.
I guess in The Witches of New York, there was some spell casting there. But most of our magical women are just in tune with more tuned in to the natural world.
Yeah.
And know their personal power that
like the Mercies was sort of touted as like witchcraft, but there wasn't really anything witchcrafty going on. I mean, they were burning witches at the stake, but it was just women who thought differently and did things and learned from the earth and did unchristian things, right?
They were continuing their pagan beliefs instead of what the church wanted.
It's like, what was I gonna say? It's like it all depends on the perspective of who's making the decision.
Yeah.
You notice in this world, none of the men were connected to the magic in the world. They didn't see it. They didn't recognize it. There was one that was sort of close because he's into medicine, but he would be legitimized. While if it came from a woman, it would not be.
And her son, not Jaime, but the other one who, Nicolas. He tries really hard, and even is he the one that starts the sort of business, or was that
Yeah, he's the constant failed.
Right, and he's like, I'm gonna predict things, and he's like, you can't do that in my house, because he's a fraud. He doesn't actually know how to predict the future like his mother does, even though he tries really hard to do it. He goes to India and becomes a yogi and to become more spiritual, and never can tap into that same resource that Clara has at her disposal.
Yep.
Do you think that was his way of also connecting with his mom? It feels like none of the men really connect with the women in their family in that way, but he did. He tried.
Another question that I saw posed in some other resource, I can't remember where, mentions the relationship between mother and daughter and father and son. But this book doesn't focus a whole lot on mother-son or father-daughter relationships too much. A little bit more father-daughter relationship with Trueba and Blanca. But the mother-son connection relationship isn't something that's really explored in this a whole lot. And I don't exactly know why.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Because, she's prevented. So... Esteban chooses to send the boys away to a boarding school, and she's thwarted and prevented from having a connection with them.
But also,
and then when they return home,
go ahead.
I would say when they return home, she realizes like, that opportunity is gone,
Mhm.
and she doesn't try.
I think it might also be that
So,
she knows that her sons are like Clara knows that her sons are gonna be all right because they are men, right? They can find their way in society
Yeah.
pretty easily. So it might just be
Yeah.
that she doesn't write that much about them because they don't have as much struggle. You know, her notebooks that bear witness to life, their lives are easier.
Mhm.
So there's not as much to tell. So maybe it's not that she doesn't care or focus on them deliberately, but the lives of her daughters are far more interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's like drawn to like,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
How do you think this novel would change if the story were told following the male lineage of the family instead? Like if you
Ooh.
traced it from, but you can't trace it from the start because Esteban isn't part of
Well, I
that
mean, we would
family, but
probably lose. We'd definitely lose a lot of the like depth and richness because the men never really have a real understanding of the nature of the women in their lives. Like,
Yeah.
right.
like we know that Miguel is telling Alba, no, you can't be with me. You can't be with me just because you love me. You can't follow me in this life. But she still lives the life of a radical
Right.
revolutionary.
And pays the
Yeah.
price for it.
But without him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's still like in the realest ways, and maybe more real than him because she's on the ground with the people trying to get them through their
Yeah.
day to day and saving them,
Exactly.
physically saving them. She's still she's truly living that devout life regardless of him
Yeah.
being there.
There's a lot of like
I
discrediting or projecting onto the women in their lives what they want those women to be and not recognizing who they are as people. And I feel like every single man in that story does that. Like,
yes, even like the good ones like Jaime
right.
on Amanda.
Yeah.
I mean, both the boys, Nicholas and Jaime, in their different ways that they love Amanda, both like want her to be the archetypal woman, desirable woman that they never really understand her life. Like, we probably would have never known about Amanda's life.
Right.
Because why would, if Nicholas got to tell his story, why would he tell us something embarrassing? Like going to her squalid apartment and seeing how she and Miguel were living.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like we would have, I mean, granted, our guide as the author probably would have done a beautiful job of handling these men. But I think we would have just missed so much about the women if these characters like behaved in the way that their traits have shown them to behave in their storytelling. Because like she did that so beautifully by letting Esteban talk for himself.
Yes. I think that I think that
like, he doesn't tell the truth.
No, I think that letting him have his own narrative was pretty artful because it really explains exactly where he's coming from and what kind of person he sees himself to be and what sort of person he is in contrast, right? What or how do the two houses in the novel differ? Which one do you think is more significant to the story? The plantation at Tres Marias or the big house on the corner at the Capitol? And do you associate either of the two houses particularly with certain characters?
I think Tres Marias, like you can't have the house on the corner without Tres Marias. Because it's the beating heart of their wealth and their connections. So you can't have one. You can't have the house on the corner without Tres Marias. So I guess I would say Tres Marias is
The more important.
I forgot about the house on the corner because everything is so central to Tres Marias.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, but it's important to everyone, so I hazard to say that it's one character's more than another's. I guess Alba is more rooted to the house on the corner.
Yeah.
Like her everything about her life that's significant has happened in the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blanca, Esteban, Clara, they're Tres Marias people. I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer's taking a sec. This is gonna be a difficult question, which we don't have to do, but what name do you think Alba will give her daughter, presuming that she follows in the tradition of naming the women after luminous words? Like, what do we guess that her name's going to be?
Clara Alba. That's true.
Okay, I'm Googling luminous word regarding hope.
Okay.
Because I really think that Alba leaves us with a lot of hope for her future.
Yes, I like that.
And then find the Spanish version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Esperanza?
Yeah. I like that.
Espera means to wait, like you're hoping. When you're hoping for something, you're waiting for something, and esperanza would be that form of it.
Well, I think esperanza means hope. Yeah, nailed it.
Look, that almost 2 years at Duolingo is finally paying off.
Muy bien.
Bueno.
Yeah, no, that was an easy one.
Okay, good.
So send us a hard one, kid.
I will try. That's kind of where my questions end, but I know we like to play the who would you cast in this movie, but did you know that there is a movie?
Yes, I did. What? And I spent a lot of time once I learned there was a movie. I spent a lot of time thinking about those characters and how they know.
The casting of this movie is extremely whitewashed. Jeremy Irons,
in a sense.
Shocker.
Jeremy Irons plays Esteban.
Oh, what?
What? Meryl Streep plays Clara. Winona Ryder plays Blanca. Glenn Close is in it. She's Ferula. Antonio Banderas.
Are there any Spanish-speaking people here? Are there
Antonio Banderas? He plays Pedro Cesar Garcia. But yeah, the cast of this movie is a little problematic.
No, wait. Let's think about that actually.
Okay.
It's mostly like Chilean elite are mostly European heritage people.
That's
true.
That's British,
but they're not British. Country. But they're not British.
No. But I'm looking up ethnic groups in Chile. The majority of Chileans are white, with a majority having Spanish or Basque ancestry.
Okay.
Then there are mestizo people and indigenous people who belong to several tribes. It just speaks more to that country not being allowed to be the master of its own fate. Since the
maybe it is appropriate casting. I don't know. It's I was.
But it is very.
I was surprised when I looked up the cast of that movie.
Conchita.
I was also shocked, and then it led me to look at it a little bit more of well, there's actually, and if you listen to the characters talk about themselves, they do not see themselves. They see themselves as Chileans, but they see themselves as, at least not as Indians. She says it a lot.
Yeah.
Like Blanca says it a lot. Esteban, I'm pretty sure, says something along those lines. The Del Valles and the Trebas are very clear about being separate.
Elite. Yeah.
Yeah, and which is illustrative in itself, right? all these dumb peasants, they don't know what they want.
I'm looking up.
Whereas actually, there are all these people who have thinking good brains too.
I'm looking it up
What are you looking at?
on Rotten Tomatoes just to be like, how good is this movie?
Oh, yeah.
Audiences give it a
63%,
72%, which is decent.
All right.
Critics give it a 31%, and it says specifically, the enviable collection of sterling actors are woefully miscast in The House of the Spirits, and that it lacks both magic and realism. So, I've not seen the movie.
Oh man, that's brutal.
But I mean, if
I was tempted. Okay, so I must not have like the like. I'm gonna abuse you guys by making you watch the trailer bit that keeps showing on Google. I must not have the like appropriateness filter.
I can't see it.
Because you see what's happening again and again.
I can't see it.
I see your face, but not it.
It's when Esteban is raping Pancha. Right there.
Wow, Google.
Google
What the heck?
Over and over again.
Well.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's a sterling cast, and I'm afraid because that movie is only 2 hours and 26 minutes.
Yeah, I'm interested to watch it now. Wow. I would like to see like how it is. Yeah.
There's no that I mean what year was that done?
1993.
1993.
Yeah, they were still doing epic blockbusters then, but this you cannot encapsulate a movie with this broad history. That's like trying to put Dune, the whole all of the Dune world into like one
2.5
movie.
hours is a long movie for 1993.
Yes, it's 3 years after Dancing with the Wolves, which was one of the longest movies to not have an intermission. Mm-hmm. That's a 3-hour movie because I was looking up the times. I just can't imagine because like when I was looking at IMDb, I kept trying to figure out who they cast as Alba because she's the storyteller. Yeah. You got to get to her life. I don't know that they made it there, and I'm afraid that they mushed, like that they conflated Clara and Blanca's story maybe together, or that Blanca and Alba Blanca might be doing Alba's.
Right, they erased an entire person
they
from
show
the movie.
Alba as a child. The only thing I saw was an actress playing Alba as a child.
But I will say they did one thing right in casting. Meryl Streep's daughter is a very good duplicate of her, and they cast Meryl Streep plays Clara, and they cast her daughter as Clara as a young
I like that.
Yes, Grace Gummer looks just like a young Meryl Streep. Yes. I mean,
I was watching she's in the Gilded Age, and I was like, God, she looks so much like a young Meryl Streep.
Hey, there you go. She is a young Meryl Streep.
I see why.
Well, do we want to rate?
So that's the only thing I'm actually really interested in.
Do we want to rate this book, like scale of 1 to 10? How are we feeling about it? I know we all finished it recently. I finished it this afternoon. Karin finished it this evening. Mm-hmm. Where do you land with your review?
I'm going to give it a 9 because I have to say I agree with you guys about like parts just kind of like going on and on.
Yeah.
I'd be like between an 8.5, like between an 8 and a 9. I might give it an 8.5, mostly because I understand the length of it. You really can't tell the story, but it's so long that I forget parts of the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I fully forgot.
But she does wrap it. Okay, but when I will say the wrap up was really good. The epilogue really tied things up, I thought. Well,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think I'm somewhere around an 8.5 maybe. It was usually the way it works is like the longer I finish something and the longer I sit with it, the more I like gain appreciation for it. James and I watched
it's still early days.
Oh shoot, what's the name of that movie? It's up for an Oscar. It's shoot, I'm not going to be able to remember it. It's the one that's a musical and it's about the drug lord cartel who has a oh shoot, what's her name? Zoe Saldana's in it. Amelia Perez. Thank you.
I haven't watched that yet.
James and I watched it, and at the beginning, I'm like, I don't know about this. And then at the end, I was like, I think I like that movie. And then the more time that has gone on afterwards, I'm like, man, that was a really good movie. So I think that I will probably feel that way about this book too. Yeah.
I think it's going to float up a lot, like a Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Thinking that it's going
You're gonna
to be something that comes to my consciousness more and more.
Yeah.
What's that phenomena, like when you learn a new word and then you see it everywhere or something? It's
I don't know what it's called, but I know what it is.
Yeah, and so I have a feeling this book's gonna have that effect on me, that I'm gonna be like, oh, look at all this Chilean thing.
And there are just books that just keep popping up that you're like, just keep thinking about. I was looking at the list of books that we have read, and I'm like, I forgot we read that. But then there are books that I keep thinking about, and I think this might be one of those.
I think it's one of those things that, for whatever reason, I never caught in the beginning what country they were in. So the entire time, I had no connection to this being Chile. Otherwise, I would have looked up Chilean history, and I would have seen, and I might have had a different appreciation.
I think she does that intentionally.
Maybe, is this called allegory?
Yeah, because she never does say the name of the country in the book. And maybe that's so that you don't relate it specifically to that country's history, or expect what's going to happen.
I think I understood it. I think maybe somewhere around the earthquake, she might say it's Chile.
I don't think she ever does.
Because the whole time I was thinking, she started talking about different inventions that were happening and different other things in history that were happening. And I kept thinking, oh, this is not olden horse carriage times. This is more modern. I mean, they've got telephones. They have technology. Where is this place?
You break the telephones and the radios. That was like, what a monster. But here he is. He's mad again. He's going to smash the telephone.
He always does. I think it's supposed to span from like the 20s, like 1920s through about the 1970s, somewhere in that time frame. Because we see the invention of the automobile,
and she wrote it
and the airplane and the telephone, and at the end there are TVs.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, President Allende was assassinated in 1973. Because I can't not Google this stuff, so I must have understood it was Chile when I looked up her biography. Then that must have been.
She's a Chilean author. Yeah.
Normally I finish this stuff up really, really fast, and then I've got time to go and do a little more deep dive. But given that I was finishing up while I was cooking dinner tonight, I did not do that.
I'm gonna have to actively read about Pablo Neruda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just pure art during a dissident time seems very appealing.
Well,
and I think of one of my favorite actors from there, and his connection to Salvador Allende. So
he's connected as well.
Their families were both.
He says that.
Yeah,
he says everybody's cousins there. That's why they're all like, "Can I have your phone number? Can I give your phone number out?" He does some bit about that. Now I feel like we're talking about the poet and the president, or the poet and the candidate, right?
Yeah.
Well,
so I guess we're going to talk about what
do we want to go through any other books we've finished recently? I don't remember.
Katie, what else have you read?
Well, I don't remember if I had already finished it last month, but I finished The Song of Achilles. Did I talk about that last month?
No, you talked about being in it, I think.
I finished The Song of Achilles, and it is one of those books that I won't stop thinking about because I really, really liked it. I'm a little sad I didn't choose it for book club because I want to talk about it, but it was so good. I'm about halfway.
Have we done an unofficial assignment in the past?
Yeah. I would love to read it again. I finished it, and then we watched Troy, and the whole time I'm telling James, I'm like, that's not what happened in the book. That's not what happened in the book. But also it's a narrative retelling of, but it was very enjoyable, and I'm halfway through the Odyssey. I have consumed a whole lot of Greek mythology content recently. which I'm totally on board for, but there's a movie that came out last year called The Return. Do either of you know about this? And it's
No. Tell me more.
So Ralph Fiennes is Odysseus, and it's about when he finally gets back home, and it's about him reclaiming his throne, and it's totally worth a watch. I love Ralph Fiennes, and I love everything he does. So
it's called The Return.
The Return. So I recommend.
Cool.
I think I have to pick up my Odyssey before I watch it, because that's actually like right where I stopped.
Yeah, I remember you telling me where you stopped, and it is in that book or in the movie. So
okay. Yeah, I gotta pick it up.
Yep. So, and then we watched the made for TV mini series of the Odyssey a week or two ago, which was fantastic, like way better than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, that's all I've read recently. Just a lot of Greek mythology in this book.
That's fabulous. This book was an accomplishment.
Yes, it was a chunk of a book.
Yes.
Yeah. So since a 19-hour book is good enough, I was looking at a 56-hour book. What do you guys think?
No.
I'm like,
I'll just say right now, no.
David Foster Wallace's what is it called? It's like his great work. Is 56.
Nothing that long is great.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm teasing.
Why don't we just listen to the Encyclopedia Britannica from A to Z?
No, this is supposed to be like good though. What have you read, Karin?
Apparently, remember I talked about startitis.
Oh yeah.
Well,
all right.
Have you guys heard of the Storygraph? It's like an app. I don't know if it's an app, but it's a website. It's kind of like Goodreads, but it's tailored more towards individual. It's not Goodreads. No, in fact, it's
something that's not Goodreads.
It's not owned by Amazon. A lot of people I know have been using it because it has some really interesting graphs and data. It's for it tracks more of your individual reading, not so much a social reading thing. So I started putting my books in, just the ones that I have here, not even all the ones I've actually read, including some of the audiobooks. I guess I'm currently reading, not counting the one we just finished, because that's now in the finished pile, 8 books. Right. I have quite a lot that I'm started, but one I'm really enjoying is called Immortal Dark. And so this girl, her family's killed, and the only way that she can survive, and she's inherited something, but the only way that she can claim her inheritance, the house that was left to her by this aunt, is if she goes to this college, because her family are the familiars. She has the familiar bloodline to vampires.
Wow.
And so they've got this symbiotic thing, and she wants nothing to do with them. In fact, she has a sister who has disappeared, and her whole thing is she's going to find out which vampire killed her sister or find her sister, because the police, of course, are not finding her. It's sort of a murder mystery plus inheritance plus frenemies to lovers kind of thing. So it's called Immortal Dark, and it's like so good.
Nice.
It's kind of like they've got the different houses that, and her vampire is one of the most minor houses. So there's like the political intrigue among vampires, but if she does not, now they cannot harm her, but they can make her life pretty awful, and her and there's a motivation for her vampire, who's not ever taken a familiar, he doesn't want her there, so he's trying to get her. If she doesn't, it's like the Scooby-Doo, if you don't spend the whole night in the haunted house, kind of thing, you don't get paid. So he's trying to make her life miserable because he doesn't want her there. But there's this one room that all your worst whatever is there, and he keeps putting himself in there to try to face it, but he can't, because if he can out survive her in this particular room, then it doesn't matter whether she spends the night or not. He can claim it, but he's got a limited time. Also, she has to take these classes with other people who are also the human familiars to the vampire, because if she's going to be part of the vampire world, she has to know what she's getting into. She has to understand their history, their lore. So she goes to the University of Vampires. So it's really really good. Some of
Dark
the familiars
academia.
get killed and under mysterious circumstances, and there, of course, they're not supposed to be meeting after hours, but they do. But Immortal Dark is really really good. That and The Family Experiment, which is
Yeah.
um
I've heard of
yeah, in a world where people are not giving birth to children anymore because of climate change and everything has made people sterile, you have an opportunity, or it's really expensive. You have an opportunity to go on this reality show where for 9 months your life is tracked, and they make this virtual AI child that you raise in that 9 months from birth to 18. It grows, and you have a whole
That's like my
virtual
favorite
world.
Star Trek episode, where Counselor Troy
That,
has a baby in an episode, and he was just
but
this like
you have
light
your real
energy that
life.
wanted to learn Earth.
All these people will eventually get eliminated. It's a social media kind of thing, popularity thing, but also, so you're trying to, some people get sponsors to keep up the keep people interested. But the winner, there's only one winner, and they have the choice of either keeping their virtual baby, virtual child, and that child they've had all this data based on their own personalities, so that child is basically what their child in real life might be, or pulling the plug on that child that they've grown connected to be able to pay for in vitro to have their own child. So it's
Ooh,
really
that's interesting.
interesting, and there's one person who's a single person going through this. So, and yeah, there's a whole lot. It's very very interesting, because it's not just the virtual world, but they're talking about stuff that's happening like in the real world around them. So, but those are the two things I'm listening to.
Very nice. I finished a fair amount of books in the last month, not as much as usual. I want to share about three. One was, I read The Life Impossible by Matt Haig, who is also the author of The Midnight Library.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Oh.
wonderful. It borders between magical realism and like just pure fantasy. It's wonderful. It's about a woman in her 70s who is surprised to inherit a house, a little, it's not even really a house, but a small abode in Ibiza. And she's a woman that she taught with in like the 80s, the 70s or the 80s, and they like spent one Christmas Eve together, and this act of kindness changed the woman's life. And she feels like she owes the return of that act of kindness to the main character of the novel. And it's this beautiful book of like grief and discovery and magic and taking care of the earth that we come from and caring for each other. I really love the way Matt Haig writes. It's so beautiful and such a fun story. And then Kaity, after we read Counterfeit, you had said you read Cover Story. That was kind of, you reminded you of it, and that was a fun
book.
Yeah, the twist, like you could see it coming from kind of a way.
Yeah.
I think. I wasn't surprised by the twist, but it was still very satisfying.
It was a fun book.
Yeah, I liked it. And the third book I would like to talk about, I left one in your office,
Yes,
Kaity,
thank you.
and you're welcome. I've mailed you one, Karin, and I keep buying them out. It's Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny. It's, I think, 117 pages of this teeny tiny, like truly pocket-sized paperback.
Mhm.
20 lessons from the 20th century. And they are 20 little essays on how to move forward if you're unhappy with what's happening in the United
Mhm.
States. I'm
Oh
sad
wow.
because he wrote this book in 2017. He's calling it a political pamphlet. He wrote it in 2017. He has since updated it as the years have gone by and new things have happened in the country. And it's on its 42nd printing. So a lot of
Wow.
people are holding this book in their hands, and I want to see more people holding it, and hopefully it will give you the hope and reassurance it's given me, because they're
Thank you.
like concrete ways to think about things and things to do. And yeah, so I hope that it gives you guys the same comfort.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
one
you.
of our customers was talking about it, and they had already listened to it twice and read it once based on your recommendation. So I was like, well, I gotta crack my issue open, and I haven't. I took it home with me today, so.
I thought I would sit and read one a day, but I couldn't put it down. And like, I finished the first half of, like, it was a 2-night read for me.
Wow.
But it's hard to put down because it's very, very well written. And it's also just content I really could latch on to.
Okay.
He has another book that came out in October 2024 called On Freedom, which is a little more toothsome, but still, I think going to be like he's a political historian who's really focused on Eastern European, because he studied to like work on relations with the USSR, and then while he was in college, that period, that federation disbanded and the politics changed. And so instead, he's focused on writing and teaching about that region and history. And so I think he's a very like a political philosopher in a sense. I'm also feeling like really connected because his birthday is also August 19th.
Oh.
Anyway, so it's a good book. I keep buying them and passing them around to people.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
I hope you guys like it.
Well,
and I hope other people hear about it and read it.
Who gets to pick our next book?
You want to know what we're reading next? It's me.
What are we reading?
Okay. So it's a really good author, but I'm going to apologize in advance because I don't think it's going to make us feel good.
Okay.
But she's such a good writer that I think it will feel okay as we go through this thing. So in trying to be conscious of the time that we're in, I have chosen Octavia Butler's The Parable of the Sower. Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. This book is sadly a future I think we're living in. She wrote it in she wrote it originally in 2000, so 25 years ago. And she thought she was writing an imaginary novel about the near future. When global climate change and economic crises lead to social chaos in the early 2020s, California becomes full of dangers, from pervasive water shortage to masses of vagabonds who will do anything to live to see another day. 15-year-old Lauren Olamina lives inside a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors, sheltered from the surrounding anarchy. In a society where any vulnerability is a risk, she suffers from hyper-empathy, a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. Precocious and clear-eyed, Lauren must make her voice heard in order to protect her loved ones from the imminent disasters her small community stubbornly ignores. But what begins as a fight for survival soon leads to something much more: the birth of a new faith and a startling vision of human destiny. And unlike the other Octavia Butler that we read together, there's a sequel to this. So in case we do love it, there's more.
Well, I love that I'm going to get the physical copy of this because this is on the banned book list.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep my copy while I can.
And it looks like it's free on Audible. Like it doesn't take a credit.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I just looked at it to like add it to
Awesome.
my library, and it didn't require me to use a credit, so I think it's free on Audible. Maybe. I don't know.
That's
Don't quote me
exciting.
on that. It was for me. I don't know.
Well, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm going to add that to my library right now. Yep.
All right.
I was still in the Libby app. It should be great because Octavia Butler was a great
Yes.
writer. I think that
Yep.
it's going to be sometimes a hard read, though.
It's all right. We're tough ladies. We can take it.
We are.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
All right. Well,
So,
thank you all for joining us again for another book, another month. If you have thoughts or insight into this book or any of the other books that we have read, we'd love to hear from you. You can always comment on Instagram or on our YouTube channel, wherever you can comment on books, or shoot us an email. You know, we'd love to hear from you. And we hope you'll join us for the next one. And our regular podcast comes out the first Tuesday of the month. So we'll see you in 2 weeks for just chatting about knitting and yarn and whatever else is exciting in our lives right then. So happy February, everybody. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
hey.